everybody, it's Kaylin from the Wellness Center. We are ready for our mental health talk today. It is 1:30, we're a few minutes late popping on, sorry about that. We hope you're excited as we are. We have Dr. Ang with us today, and then we have Sally Ann. They're going to be doing about a 20-25 minute talk, and then we're going to open up for questions at the end. So if you have questions, just kind of type them in the comments, and then we'll kind of relay them back and forth. But we hope you enjoy it.
Thank you. Well, hello, I am Sally Ann Schneider. I'm Director of Behavioral Medicine Services at Berkeley and Jefferson Medical Centers, and this is Dr. Ang, our Chief of Psychiatry and Medical Director for our services. And we're excited to come today because this is Mental Health Month. And in a normal Mental Health Month, we discuss and try to normalize some of the mental health conditions we have, such as depression and anxiety, that affect 1 in 5 Americans over their lifetime. But this is a different mental health month because we really have to focus on staying healthy, staying focused on taking care of each other, and being able to really look at what wellness means in this area. So I have a series of questions for Dr. Ang at this point that I'm going to interview him, and then he will be asking me a series of questions as a marriage and family therapist. Since we work together as partnerships for people and families, and I like to think of what we do also working with normal people with normal problems throughout their lifetime. So Dr. Ang, I shall ask you the first question.
Thank you, Sally.
So what are the key symptoms of any kind of mental health issue that people should be looking for right now?
Sure. So again, thank you so much for the introduction, and thank you, audience, for joining us. There's a lot of things that we need to look out for now, especially during these times, these really unprecedented times of this virus and people just being stuck at home. Mainly with psychiatry and in the field of mental health, we typically address multiple pathologies or problems, including depression, bipolar disorder, trauma, anxiety, and drug abuse. So things that we need to look out for are some of the key symptoms to those pathologies, those problems. So examples would be poor sleep, loss of interest, feelings of guilt, hopelessness, loneliness, low energy, poor concentration, loss of appetite, and to the point where sometimes it can get so bad that people are may think of taking their own life, or to a point where they're feeling so hopeless that they feel it's not worth living anymore. Other things that we need to look out for besides depression or anxiety is, do we feel claustrophobic? Do we feel worried about just staying home because there's no one around to support us? Are we having panic attacks? Is our heart pounding? Do we feel like our hands are sweating? The room is spinning. And the other problems that we look out for are racing thoughts, pressured speech, and something that's really overlooked these days are addiction issues with alcoholism, pain pill abuse, opiate abuse, heroin use, benzodiazepines, and drug abuse, even cannabis. Those types of things can really functionally impair people, and when they're alone and they have nothing to do, usually those types of things sort of creep back in and their symptoms can show. Those are the types of things that we look out for. So people, for the viewers at home and here, those are just a generalization of the symptoms that one can be experiencing during these times. But there is an enormous amount of other symptoms that one can feel. But those are typically the general things we look out for, Sally.
Okay, so if somebody sees those symptoms, when should they call a doctor? When should they reach out?
That's a great question. So as a psychiatrist and as a mental health professional, what we do is we assess the time when someone really needs help, whether they need medications, whether they need therapy. And how we do that is if these symptoms that we just discussed, poor sleep, loss of interest, thoughts of hopelessness, helplessness, so on and so forth, if those symptoms cause impairment in your daily functioning. What I mean by that, when you wake up, do you feel to a point where you can't do your daily activities? You can't eat your breakfast. You can't enjoy a phone call with your family member. You can't enjoy the things that you used to enjoy. Granted, we're inside now because of because of the quarantine. But even inside, can we enjoy our times with our loved ones? Can we enjoy even playing video games, reading, doing art, painting, listening to music? If you find that you're not enjoying those things anymore and you're not doing those things, and that you're just sort of confined to your own space, to your own headspace, and you're very introspective, and you're not really doing those things that you used to like, and it's impairing you, we call that functionally impairing. And that is when you seek treatment from a professional, whether it's through a psychiatrist or through a therapist. But and again, if you're not even sleeping well, if you typically get 6 hours to 8 hours of sleep, but you're only sleeping 2 hours, or if you're sleeping too much because you're so tired, those are all symptoms that you need to address, because things are changing and things are different. And once you acknowledge that things are changing, things are different, and you've noticed that you're not whom you used to be, that is the key to what I emphasize, the functional impairment. And that is why psychiatrists exist. That's why therapists exist, is because people have lost their normalcy. They've lost the person that they used to be, and we want to get that back. We want to return you or whoever seeks help back to their original state, when they were happy, when they were functioning normally, and when things could bring smiles to their faces again. And I know it's difficult during these times, but again, it's very important to keep up with that health, to keep up with your mental health, physical health, spiritual health, however you have it. But those are key components to that.
I think one of the things that has always amazed me in our field, which I love, is that if we have problems with mental health, we separate that entirely from physical health. So if we broke an arm,
That's right.
if we had a problem with our heart, it's not a big deal for people, other than they believe they can heal. But for some reason we have this attached stigma with the brain, which to me it's like if something goes wrong with your computer, it is our master control center, and it would be more likely to get sick because it has to do everything. So I'd really encourage people to not put that stigma with it and be able to reach out to a doctor if there's a problem, because they would if it were another kind of problem. So I have to ask you, what do you do to stay healthy in your life?
So before I even answer that question, that point that you made is a very critical point. Psychiatry has come a long way. Mental health has come a long way. There had been a dramatic stigmatization of mental health for years, because everyone thought it's all in the brain. And what Sally Ann and I would like to emphasize to our audience is that it's not just that. It's not just there's something wrong in your head. It's a global thing in your body. So in terms of health, you want to have a healthy mind, body, spirit. All those things are closely entwined. So if one is not healthy physically, they're likely not healthy mentally, because they have a lot of stress. Their blood isn't being pumped as optimally if one has really significant diabetes, or if one can't breathe well and they have challenges breathing, and they have COPD. They're not comfortable, they're not sleeping well. So all these things tie into one another in terms of how they're interrelated: mental health, physical health. So it's very important not to just say, oh, this person has mental illness, because there's all these other components of health that we have to put together. And that's why when you check in with your regular primary care physician, they often check on your mental health. They want to make sure that you're doing well, that you're happy, and that you feel safe. And those are questions that have become very commonplace and very universal now, because it is an essential part of complete whole healthiness. That being said, I know I digressed a little bit.
Back.
Let's go back to what do I do to be healthy as a psychiatrist, just as a general, normal human being. Things that I do during these times: I spend time with my family. I love spending time with my daughter and my wife. I like to exercise. I think exercise is a real key thing. And again, know your limitations, know how much exercise you can sustain and how much energy you can burn. But for myself, I like to lift weights. I like to do some cardiovascular exercises. I often like to watch Netflix, and again, spend a lot of time with my daughter, and we like to go outside and go to the park, as long as we're doing doing social distancing. But, you know, I think really important things that can keep one healthy and happy together is eating well, getting sunlight, making sure that you're not just withdrawn in your home, isolative. Again, you know, we have a lot of people that this is a new era. This is a new era of technology, and a lot of us just stay glued to TV. They stay glued to the computer. And we need to remind ourselves that although we can find some joy in that, really important things are, you know, getting outside, exercising, getting sun, engaging with people personally, you know, whether it's through Zoom or at an appropriate social distance, but still engaging with others, staying connected with society, staying connected with yourself. Those are the types of things that remind us that we're humans and that we can still achieve happiness and health during these times.
Okay.
Yeah.
Do you have any questions for me?
I sure do, Sally. And again, thank you for such thoughtful questions. I think what's really important these days is, and questions that will come up a lot, or especially for our viewers at home, is how do we stay positive? So what are things that you do, Sally, or what things can you recommend to the audience in terms of daily positivity? How do we stay positive?
You know, we are in such a wonderful time to me in behavioral medicine because we're learning about all different methods of psychology that we didn't used to know. So there's a whole science now about positive psychology, and it shows that if you engage in positives in your life, your brain gets healthier. That means the neurotransmitters that keep the whole thing working work a lot better. So I think one of the best suggestions that I've seen from research is you start your day with 3 positives. That might be 3 positive emails. It might be saying 3 positive things to someone. In your home, it may be simply getting up and having a routine that's positive instead of negative, and that's been shown to make your brain better. I think also being positive in the life of others is critical, because a lot of times, particularly if somebody's suffering with a mental illness or a problem, we can see it in them before they can see it in themselves. Mm-hmm. So we have an obligation to those we care about by being positive with other people around us. One of the things that I've used in my life, and I've used it professionally, I've used it personally, is I have a lifeline list. So I have people that are my friends that are experts in certain areas, and if I need to shout out to them on a particular thing, I do. So I've worked on staying connected to them.
That's a great idea.
I think one of my favorite things that's happened in this last week from a lifeline perspective is I've been wanting to have a mask, a decorative mask, and one of my friends who's an ED physician in the Midwest has a whole host of masks. She thought of me when she saw a particular one, so she is sending me the mask. I'm sending her a mask from West Virginia, so we're finding that way to connect. She also is what I would call an accountability partner. So I might get a call from her at 10 o'clock at night, and she said, "What 3 things did you do today for someone else?" Mm-hmm. So I think that's a great way of staying positive, is to have those people in your life. I am a firm believer also in documenting what you do, or else it's hard to keep track of it. So I'm all about putting a calendar on the refrigerator and putting check marks on it. I carry a daily planner. I'll put check marks in the corner to make sure I've done what I committed to myself to do and to other people, so I tell them to do that. For some people, journaling can be an incredible positive experience. I believe one of the #1 interview questions people are going to get asked moving forward as our world comes back online is going to be, what did you learn personally in this experience? What did you learn about yourself? What did you learn about your character? What did you learn about others? So I think if we can journal and record that, that's a very good thing. I'm also a big believer in enjoyable activities and hobbies, and you've got to replace the negative with the positive. A perfect example is the news. If you watch the news too much, and my family might say I'm in that same category, but you also have to add positives in there as well, because that is what our brain needs to stay healthy.
Great answers, great answers. Another question, probably what our viewers may be wondering, is what happens if our viewers notice a decline in their loved ones in terms of mental health? If they're noticing that someone in their family is not happy and they're not doing well during these times, what would you suggest they do?
I think one of the very first steps, and it goes back to what we talked about the brain and how fundamental that plays in our health, I think they need to tell them. I think if you see somebody sleeping more, or you see somebody crying, or you see somebody not themselves, you sit down and you would talk to them like you would about any other physical condition. You know, if somebody was sneezing and had a cold, we'd go up and say, hey, do you have allergies or what's going on? But sometimes we try to avoid what's uncomfortable because we traditionally have not known how to talk to people about those things. So I think one of the first steps is sitting them down. I think the second step is help them develop one practical thing that can do a day differently to be supportive. Let's say it's your neighbor next door and you're worried about them. Do one positive thing for them a day. I was on a conversation last night where I listened to neighborhoods that had prepared May baskets this last week for their neighbors to surprise them. And I think if you can do one positive thing for somebody you see that is sad, then it helps give them hope. And a lot of this is about getting through things with hope. And I think also sitting down with them and helping them develop their own support system. I mean, sitting down and saying a conversation, what is important to you? Do you need to call somebody? Who do you need to reach out to? What do you need to happen? So I think helping them organize that is also something loved ones can do.
Great answer, great ideas. I also want to just, echo what you said. When we're at a point where we feel our loved ones are deteriorating or depressed or sad, although we have a lot of limitations during these times, most of us still have access to healthcare. And I want to remind our viewers that whether it's via telepsychiatry, telemedicine, we can still see patients through the phone or through our computers, and we can still diagnose and treat. So please don't be discouraged to seek out professional help if you feel that your loved one is in real need of that, or again, if you are in need of that. But I do really feel like your suggestions are very meaningful. My last question for you, Sally, is that we always see the term resiliency or being resilient, and we see that more often than ever. And now that it's Mental Health Month, do you think you can describe to the audience what exactly does resiliency mean, or being resilient as a person?
Resiliency is about building a set of skills that we know helps us take a bad situation and overcome it so we don't have bad outcomes in the end. Resiliency is critical. It is a whole area of research now. There is something called the Adverse Childhood Experience Scale. We know now from research that if you've had a whole bunch of trauma as a child, you are more likely to have a shortened lifespan with really bad health outcomes. So what we work on with children is giving them ways and skill sets to develop to be able to handle bad things that happen. One of the things that you do in resiliency, and you have to build it every day, it's something you do every day, but you try to replace the bad with the good. So you're always adding positives back into your life. A perfect example would be, as an adult, if you're hanging around people with a really bad mood, change your audience at this time. If you listen to a positive podcast, do something that will help. There are all kinds of apps now that go on phones that have cognitive behavioral therapy behind them as a process, so it makes you reboot. A perfect example of resiliency is a Fitbit. So people that are using a Fitbit, once you hit your number of steps, it will buzz on your wrist. For most of us, that's very exciting if that happens. And it's teaching us, it's giving us a signal that you just got an award. Now, it doesn't mean anything in terms of a real award we got other than it's helping keep us healthy, but it's a reminder that we're in the game and we got our goal done. So that's part of what the whole movement with resiliency is and how we stay healthy. But it's something you've got to build, because if we learn to build resiliency now, when COVID is over or when the next event comes, then we are stronger people and we are able to go on and be better parents, to be better coworkers, to be better mentors.
Yes.
So it's about embracing a growth in ourselves so we can stay healthy.
Great, thank you so much for that explanation. So right now we would like to open up the floor to any questions for our viewers at home. If you guys have any questions about mental health, about treatment, about diagnosing people, diagnosing patients, and how Sally and I go about our jobs and what we can do to offer parents or whomever needs, more thorough analysis and more thorough treatments, please ask. We're here and we're open to any questions you guys have at home.
So how do we service for help for low income within the community? Okay, so West Virginia has a very good safety net, and truly most organizations cannot turn people away for ability to pay. So it would be in the local community mental health centers that would be part of this. Also, the addictions community is very robust in how those services can be handled. And possibly we could post more information later on the Facebook page to answer that specifically with contact information for local organizations.
I would echo that, yeah.
And then we have someone asking, how can we help a family member who already struggles with anxiety and depression but doesn't take your suggestion? They've downloaded the Calm app, or like to get out in the sun, anything that you can tell them to tell their family members.
Sure, that's a tough one, and a lot of that involves whether or not your family member is interested in seeking help. So I think one of the main things you do is when you approach someone or you approach a family member, the best things we can do is never be condemning, or we never judge them, but we reach out to them compassionately, saying that, hey, I've noticed that you've been doing this. I've noticed that you're not sleeping well. I noticed that you've been worrying a lot more. I love you. I care about you. I want to make sure that you're healthy, and I want to make sure that I'm doing everything I can to help you. Is there anything on your mind that we can chat about, that we can talk about, and see where it goes from there? I think it's very easy just to be so protective of our loved ones or some people that we care about that we just immediately suggest something to them. And oftentimes those people or our loved ones aren't ready to hear that. So what we do is we introduce those ideas to them by letting them know that we care about them and that we've noticed something, and leave the floor open to them and see what they have to say. Because sometimes we can be completely off. They might be thinking about something. There may have been an acute event that had made them upset and they just need some time to themselves. Or they may have very well, in fact, had this prior to the quarantine, and they've been suffering from depression or anxiety that entire time. But again, it's all about not being judgmental. It's being compassionate. It's being caring and showing that in a very non-invasive way and in a very gentle, understanding way, and just opening the floor up to that loved one and seeing if they're willing to talk. And again, if they're not, give them time. And if it's to a point where there's concern for safety, where they're not eating well and they're deteriorating, that's when we would like you to intervene in terms of getting more professional help. I hope that answers your question.
I'm going to add to, especially since the Calm app was brought up, because I like the Calm app, but especially depending on the age, learning how to use apps takes practice. So one of the things I would suggest is actually practice the app with the person. Text them a couple times a day and say, are you using your app? Because it takes a while to get used to that and wired. I know when I first wore a Fitbit, I did not like it at all. And I had to remember to charge the battery and all of those things that go along with that. So I think it's the same with the apps, trying to get people into the routine, because especially if somebody has had problems for a long time, they're already into the routine of being less healthy. So to get somebody into a new routine really takes practice and support.
And another thought, and I appreciate that too, Sally, this is also reminding me of something. We need to make sure that the person or the family member that we're talking about of concern is healthy. There are many medical conditions that can mimic depression. Issues with your hormones, with your thyroid, other things that can mimic anxiety. So there is a stigmatization, and there has been, and depending on the family and depending on someone who's in their exposure to mental health, we need to understand where that person is in terms of seeking help, and if they're comfortable doing that. And if they are not, the best way to do that is to approach that through their primary care physician, because they can do evaluations on their health, on their electrolytes, on their hormones, and on their blood, and then we can can see if there is something medically that is causing this, and if not, their primary care physician can introduce the idea to them to seek out mental health care.
I think we're good.
Okay, well, thank you for joining us, and I know Dr. Ang and I love to talk about behavioral medicine and mental health and
Thank you so
wellness.
much.
So
Yeah,
maybe
thanks
we
for
can do a regular mental health show.
That'd be great, Sally.
Thank you.
Thank you.